So today I'm going to show you how to make this procedural sort of dirt texture that you can stick on any wall you want. It's quite realistic and you can draw it on however you want. Just add some weight paint. Boom. You got some dirt. I'm going to show you the shader setup and also any tips to make this workflow a bit easier for you. Let's get into it. I'm going to do this in another project file. Start from scratch. So this is the wall from before. And by the way, the scene you just saw from before, hang on, I'll take this back up. This was my recreation of the bathroom from the Saw movie. If you can go to my Instagram or ArtStation or anything like that, give it a like. It'd be really appreciated. Back to the video. So what we're going to do is first we need to set up the weight paint. So first thing you need to make sure of is that your wall has enough subdivisions. So I'm just going to give it that many, and maybe one here. So now every face looks like it's roughly a square. You want to make sure the mesh density is sort of square, and then you can just subdivide it a bit. And I'd say something like this. Maybe we could go one step finer. Yeah, there we go. Should be good enough to start drawing your wall. Next few things, you're going to need to go to data, add a vertex group. I'm going to call this dirt 1. I'll tell you why in a sec, because we need to add another color attribute. I'm going to call this dirt. Now the reason we're doing this is because for some reason when you're using a vertex group as a mask, it only works in cycles for me, and I'm not sure why. So the way to get around it is rather than just using a vertex group, you have to use a color attribute. And then that allows you to use this technique in Eevee. Now the reason I've called the vertex group dirt1 is because if I called it dirt and then added a color attribute called dirt, Blender wouldn't let that happen. I don't know why, because apparently they can't have the same name. But the easy fix is just go back into dirt1 and rename that to dirt. And for some reason it works when you're just doing it the reverse way round. Don't know why Blender's iffy like that, but that's how you do it. Now I did forget to mention at the start of the video that this technique involves adding another plane in front of your main wall, and we'd be using transparency to mask out the dirt. You can do this on the wall itself, but because I have separate materials on this wall, I needed to use a sort of transparent plane in front. So we're going to go to the shading tab and we're going to add a new material. I'm just going to call it dirt and grime. Suppose that works. And before I do anything, I'm going to want to turn the roughness up to 1. And I'm going to go into object properties, visibility, and I'm going to turn off shadow because we don't want this sort of, we don't want this plane casting a shadow on the wall, as it's supposed to look like it's part of the wall itself. And I'm also going to do this in cycles, but this works in Eevee as well. And if you want to use Eevee, make sure your render method in material settings is on blended rather than dithered. And if you're in cycles, make sure to change your device to GPU compute. And I like to do 32 samples and the denoiser on. So what I've done here first is I've used a noise texture, and that gets plugged into the alpha. And I'm going to press Ctrl-T if you have Node Wrangler to get this texture coordinate system up. But if you don't have Node Wrangler, just a texture coordinates will work. You don't need the mapping node. We're going to take objects to vector. And now you can see the noise is quite fine. In fact, I'm going to take this straight into surface so that we know what we're looking at. And I'm going to keep the scale at 5. And I think I'm going to turn the detail up a bit. Somewhere around there should be fine. Roughness up a bit as well, maybe 0.8. Always like 0.8. And we're now going to put this in a color ramp. And we're just going to increase the contrast a little bit. Maybe increase those blacks and those whites. Whites can probably go a bit higher. Something like this should work. And now we're going to put in an attribute node. And in the name here, I'm going to change it to dirt. And if I just Control Shift left click on this, we can't see anything at the moment. And I know why that is. It's because we haven't drawn anything. So I am going to draw something. I'm just going to call it subscribe. Let's go. And now we can see that what we've painted has turned into a mask for the attribute node. Very nice. Now we're going to add a mix color. And we're going to put the attribute in the factor. And turn A into pure black. And use the noise as B. Now you can see that where it's been masked in, it's actually noise and not just blank white. And that'll be useful quite soon. So I'm going to move this to the left a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste this color ramp from the other project. But what this is I've gone into Google and I've searched up Rust hex codes. So it's giving me a set of hex codes for like Rust, I suppose. And I don't know why I'm using Rust instead of Grime, but that's what I did for the previous project. And you can use any sort of set of colors you want. And I'm just going to stick that in. Now we've got something like this, which is quite nice. And is that in the base color? It's not in the base color. We're going to stick this into the base color. And we are going to stick the mix without the ramp into the alpha. And now if we view this, we have an effect like this. It's very cool, but we're not done yet. Now what I've gone out of my way of doing is a technique called color variation. And I'm going to use a noise texture to sort of shift the hue around this dirt a little bit. So I'm going to add a hue saturation value node. And I'm going to add another noise texture. And since we already have a texture coordinate, I don't want to clutter up the scene, the node setup, I suppose. So I'm just going to put that straight into the vector. And for my previous project, I have made these values 2 on scale. Okay, now what we're going to do is stick the factor into hue. We've got some color variation here, but obviously I don't think dirt's going to have purples in it. So what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to get a map range node, stick it in the middle, and by doing this, I can manipulate exactly the colors I want. So we're focusing specifically on 2 min and 2 max. So in my previous project, I set the 2 min to 0.45. So if we go up there, you can see we're getting a slightly greenier color, which is quite nice. And I can see I probably haven't stuck with the Rust colors. So really, as long as you're using color variation, you can change it to any color you want. And I'm just sort of using this as a baseline, I suppose. And we're going to turn the 2 max because it's obviously very lime green. So I'm going to turn the 2 max down to 0.7. I think that gives me a sort of dirty, mucky yellow effect. Oh, we're getting some reds, we're getting some yellows. That's pretty good. We can take this a step further and use the from min and from max to increase the contrast. If I turn this up, we're getting a few more reds. Turn from max down, we get a few more greens. And maybe you like this. Maybe I quite like this. But don't think much dirt is that red. This isn't supposed to be blood. So do something like that. Actually turn the greens up again. So we've got like a murky yellow. It's quite nice. So there we go. That's basically the whole shader setup. But I'm just gonna give you a few guidelines on how to set this up. So first of all, I'm going to go back into weight paint. I'm going to turn my brush size up by holding F, then left clicking. And while holding Control, I can just erase all of this. And before I do anything, I think I'm going to copy and paste some sort of pipe from the other scene into this scene so that I can give you an example. I'll move this to the wall, just right sort of in front of it, so it's very close. I'm just going to give you an example of how to make these, how to paint this realistically. So I'm going to go into weight paint, and I'm going to use the pipe as a sort of guideline. I'm just going to paint behind the pipe, and we can add some variation. We don't have to be crazy with this, like just doing that, something like that. Maybe erase a bit everywhere. And now, as I go back into object mode, we've got this sort of dirt that's built up behind the pipe. It looks quite nice. And we can take this a step further. And what I've done with my old project, my sword project, is I've just weight painted the top a little bit. Turn this down. And I'm going to have some dirt sort of leaking down. Now, I don't think this part is specifically realistic, because if you're having things leaking down, it's most likely water, not some weird dirt. We can also do a few things like, I don't know, a couple spots. If I erase them, I've got a little bit of variation. Maybe they can contribute to the scene. Back into object mode. Boom. We've got some dirt. Very small, actually. Doesn't look as good as in my old scene. Maybe I'll fix that up. So we're just going to add a few more droplet type patterns. And that is slightly better. Slightly better. I know how I could fix this. I could go in with the eraser. Just add a little. This is absolutely, I'm not artistic at all, but this seems to just avoid having like a very thick layer of dirt there. I mean, that doesn't look too good. So I'm just gonna do that to avoid thick layering. There we go. We've got some dirt. We've got some wall dirt. I think that's turned out quite well. You can be obviously way more creative than I've been with how you draw this out. And yeah, I'd say that's about it. So thanks for watching my first tutorial. Please please like and subscribe and follow me on Instagram. That's where I'm most active. And maybe I'll see you soon. Thank you, everyone.